My name is Elena Brooks. I am 33 years old. My family branded me their greatest failure the instant they learned about my pregnancy at 21. The betrayal left me reeling with shock and isolation that I could barely process. It all exploded at my father's company anniversary celebration in Charlotte when I pulled my parents aside in the back room to share the news. My father slammed his hand on the desk and declared I was the stupidest mistake of his entire life, that an unmarried pregnant daughter would ruin the family reputation he had spent decades building. My mother stood completely silent, her eyes fixed on the floor, offering no support at all. My heart broke into pieces, but I lifted my chin, turned around, and walked straight out of the party without a single plea. But that quiet exit hit a turning point no one saw coming. If you're sitting there thinking about your own family struggles, drop a comment with your city and the time you're watching. Knowing I'm not alone in this helps more than you know. That night, the drive back to my tiny apartment felt endless. I kept replaying the way my father's voice carried through the hallway as I left loud enough for his business partners to hear every cruel word. My mother never followed me. She never even called out my name. I pulled into the parking lot and sat there for hours, hands gripping the steering wheel, wondering how 21 years of trying to be the son he never had could end in one sentence. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my cousin Jessica Hale who had been at the party. Elena, your father is already on the phone with the whole family, telling them you embarrassed everyone. She said, her voice low and urgent. He's saying you're on your own now. Be careful. I thanked her and hung up, but the words settled like stones in my stomach. That was only the beginning of the pressure. I had always known I was the disappointment. Growing up in the suburbs outside Charlotte, my father pushed me into every boy's activity he could find. While other girls took dance lessons, I was hauling lumber on his construction sites every summer, learning to swing a hammer so I could one day run the company. My mother watched it all and never once suggested I might want something different. She simply nodded along, keeping the peace in the only way she knew how. When I met Marcus Reed at 20, he seemed like the escape I had been waiting for. He was charming, funny, and promised me the kind of life where I would finally be seen as a woman, not a replacement son. 8 months later, I was pregnant. Terrified but hopeful, I thought telling my parents at the company party would be a fresh start. I was wrong. The days after the party blurred into survival mode. Marcus vanished the moment I told him. His last text was short and cold. He had a fiancée the entire time and wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. I packed what little I could carry and moved into a boarding house that smelled of mildew and regret. 3 jobs kept me afloat: mornings at a bakery, afternoons at a dry cleaner, evenings at a call center, but my body was already protesting. At 6 months pregnant, I collapsed during a shift. The ambulance ride was a haze of fear. In the hospital, a kind doctor told me I had to slow down or I would lose the baby. I quit 2 jobs that same day, surviving on the one paycheck food stamps and sheer will. My daughter Lily arrived in April, tiny and perfect, and I named her after the flower that pushes through concrete because that was exactly what we were doing. No one from my family came to the hospital. I told the nurse they were traveling. It was easier than explaining the truth. I held Lily against my chest and whispered the promise I would keep for the rest of my life: she would never feel unwanted the way I had. A few weeks later, my best friend Claire Davidson showed up at the boarding house with groceries and a fierce look in her eye. "You're not doing this alone," she said, setting the bags on the counter. Claire had been my coworker at the call center and had seen me hiding tears between calls. She stayed that night rocking Lily so I could sleep for the first time in weeks. Her support kept me going when everything else felt impossible, but the psychological pressure from my family never stopped. My cousin Jessica called again a month later. "Your father is telling everyone you chose this mess. They're cutting you out of every family photo and story. It's like you never existed." The words stung, but I had Lily to protect. I could not afford to crumble. Around the time Lily turned 1, I landed an entry-level job at a struggling property management firm run by Barbara Klein, a tough 68-year-old widow who had built the business from nothing after losing her husband. Barbara noticed how late I stayed and how carefully I fixed mistakes no one else caught. One afternoon, she called me into her office and asked what I wanted out of life. I told her the truth. I never wanted to feel powerless again. She nodded once and started teaching me everything she knew about real estate. That same week, my cousin Jessica warned me that my father had started spreading rumors at local events, saying I was unstable and making poor choices. The gossip was small, but vicious, and it made finding decent housing even harder. I felt the walls closing in again. Yet, every night, I looked at Lily sleeping and remembered my promise. I studied for my real estate license at 2 in the morning while she dreamed beside me. The first time I passed a practice exam, I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes, then dried my eyes and kept going. The pressure kept building. My mother sent one short letter through Jessica saying she was sorry, but my father thought it best if they moved on. Sorry. The word felt smaller than the silence she had chosen at the party. I folded the letter and tucked it away, but the hurt stayed with me. Then Barbara promoted me and started giving me my own listings. My first sale was a neglected condo that had sat on the market for months. I staged it myself with thrift store furniture and the smell of fresh cookies. It sold in 3 weeks. The commission check felt like the first real breath I had taken in years. But just as things started to feel possible, Jessica called with another warning. Your family is telling people you're using the baby to get sympathy. They're making it hard for anyone connected to them to work with you. The rumors were spreading, and I could feel the slow squeeze of their disapproval tightening around my future. I held Lily a little closer that night and wondered how much more I could take before something broke. But the breaking point crept closer than I expected when the rumors my family spread started bleeding into my professional life like poison in a well. I was still holding Lily tight in our cramped boarding house room, rocking her to sleep after another long day when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Jessica Hale again, my cousin, who had somehow become my only window into the world I left behind. Elena, your father is telling everyone at the Chamber of Commerce that you're unstable and using the baby for sympathy, she whispered, voice tight with worry. A couple of his old business buddies just pulled out of a meeting Barbara Klein set up for you. Be careful they're not stopping at erasing you from photos anymore. I thanked her quietly and hung up, but the weight of it settled in my chest like concrete. My father had always been the one to light the match, and my mother had always stood there letting the fire burn. That silence of hers at the company anniversary party still echoed louder than any shout. I kissed Lily's forehead and promised myself I would not let their words steal the future I was scraping together for us. The next 2 years became a grind of small victories and sharper setbacks. Barbara Klein promoted me faster than anyone expected, handing me listings no one else wanted because she saw the same hunger in me that had saved her own company after her husband passed. She was tough, no nonsense, and never let me make excuses. One afternoon, she pulled me aside after I closed my third sale and said, Kid, you've got the eye for turning wreckage into something people fight over. Don't let anyone, especially not blood, tell you different. Her words were the first real validation I had felt since I was a girl, hauling lumber to please a man who never saw me as enough. Around the time Lily turned 3, I met Ryan Thompson at a regional real estate conference in Raleigh. He was 35, an architect with a quiet steadiness that felt foreign after Marcus Reed's lies. Ryan had a 5-year-old son named Noah who tagged along to the kids' corner while we talked shop. At first, I turned down his invitation for coffee twice because trust was a luxury I could not afford. But Ryan never pushed. He just showed up, consistently respecting every boundary I put up, proving through actions instead of promises that he was exactly who he appeared to be. When Lily asked why we didn't have a backyard like Noah's house, Ryan overheard and quietly sketched a simple swing set on a napkin for her. That small gesture cracked something open in me. Success started arriving in bigger waves, but so did the family pressure. My first major flip was a rundown duplex in a transitioning neighborhood that everyone else had written off. I poured every spare hour into it, staging rooms myself and baking those same cookies that had worked before. The day it sold for nearly double what I paid, I stood in the empty living room and felt something close to hope. But that same evening, Jessica called with another warning. Your mother was at Bridge Club yesterday, and someone asked about you. She just stared at her cards and changed the subject. Your father followed up by telling the group you were still causing trouble. One of my clients heard it and almost backed out of the deal you just closed. They're trying to starve you out, Elena. The words stung because I knew exactly how my mother's silence worked. It was never loud, but it always gave my father permission to keep swinging. I thanked Jessica and ended the call, but inside, I felt the slow squeeze tightening again. Still, I refused to let it stop me. With Barbara's client list and Ryan's architectural advice on my side, I closed deal after deal. By the time Lily started kindergarten, I had saved enough for a down payment on something real, a 4-acre property on the edge of a quiet Charlotte suburb, with room for the backyard I had promised her years earlier. Sarah Mitchell became part of the picture around then. She was a sharp, no-nonsense client in her late 40s who had hired me to sell her late mother's historic home. Sarah saw how late I worked and how carefully I handled every detail, and she started referring friends my way. One afternoon over coffee, she said I heard whispers about your family at a charity event last week. Your father was there painting you as the family embarrassment. Don't let it touch what you're building here. You've earned every brick. Her words landed like a lifeline because Sarah had watched enough people get torn down by gossip to recognize it when she saw it. She even offered to testify if any of the rumors ever affected a closing. Life felt almost balanced for the first time. Ryan and I had grown close enough that he and Noah spent weekends at our new place helping plant flowers and build that swing set. Lily called him Ryan with the kind of easy smile that made my chest ache in the best way. Barbara retired shortly after my 30th birthday, handing me her remaining accounts with a proud nod and a bottle of champagne she told me not to open until I hit my first million. I still have that bottle on a shelf unopened, waiting for a moment that felt big enough. But the family never really let go. The rumors evolved from whispers to something more calculated. Jessica texted me screenshots of social media comments from people I used to know my father's old construction buddies, implying I had abandoned the family business for selfish reasons. My mother never posted anything herself, but her silence still spoke volumes. Every time a new deal hit a snag, I wondered if their reach had found it first. Then came the morning I will never forget. I was in my home office reviewing plans for a new condo conversion when my security team buzzed the intercom. The voice on the other end was professional but careful. Ma'am, there's an older couple at the main gate. They say they're your parents, and they're asking to speak with you. My stomach dropped. Lily was outside laughing, with Noah on the swing set Ryan had helped build, completely unaware that the people who had thrown us away were now standing at the edge of the life we had fought so hard to create. I stared out the window at my daughter's happy face and felt every year of struggle rise up at once. My father had called me his stupidest mistake the day he learned about Lily. My mother had chosen mashed potatoes over her own daughter, and now they were here probably because word of my success had finally reached them. I told security I would be down shortly, but I made them wait. Not out of cruelty, but because I needed those minutes to steady the shaking in my hands and decide whether the woman I had become could face the people who had tried to break the girl I used to be. What happened next at that gate still keeps me up some nights, because the choice I made there cost me more than I ever expected. I walked down the long driveway to the main gate, the gravel crunching under my shoes like tiny warnings I tried to ignore. The security guard nodded once and stepped aside, leaving me face to face with the two people I had spent 9 years learning to live without. There stood my father, Victor Brooks, his once broad shoulders now stooped under the weight of whatever trouble had driven him here, and my mother, Diane Brooks, hovering half a step behind him, exactly as she had at the company anniversary party years ago. Victor's eyes flicked over the estate behind me, taking in the manicured lawn, the swing set Ryan had built, the lights glowing from the windows of the home I had earned with my own two hands. He cleared his throat and launched right in voice thick, with that same controlled fury I remembered. Elena, we've come to talk sense. This nonsense has gone on long enough. Your mother and I raised you. We gave you everything, and now you're living like some kind of queen while we're staring down foreclosure on the house you grew up in. Family helps family. It's time you did your part instead of playing the victim. The words landed like the same hammer he used to swing on job sites, but sharper now because they carried 9 years of silence behind them. My mother Diane said nothing. She just stared at the ground, fingers twisting the strap of her worn purse, offering the same quiet agreement she had given when he called me his stupidest mistake in front of his entire staff. I felt the old ache rise, but I kept my voice steady. You gave me 1 hour to pack my life into 2 suitcases and told me never to come back. You made sure every relative knew I was dead to you. And now you show up at my gate demanding I fix the mess you created. That's not family, Victor. That's convenience. Victor's face flushed. Don't you dare talk to me like that. I built a company from nothing so you could have a future. You threw it away for some loser and a baby. The least you can do is write a check and stop pretending you're better than us. He jabbed a finger toward the house where Lily's laughter floated out on the evening air. That little girl in there is our blood, too. You owe her grandparents. The jab hit harder than I expected. Lily had started asking questions about family at school, and every time I changed the subject, it felt like another small cut. But I had made her a promise the day she was born. I looked my father dead in the eye and said, Lily has never known what it feels like to be called a mistake. She has never sat in a hospital room alone because her own parents decided she was an inconvenience. She will never owe anyone for simply existing. That's the only legacy I'm passing on. Diane finally lifted her gaze, and for 1 second I saw something raw flicker there, but it vanished when Victor put his arm around her shoulders, like he was protecting her from me. I turned to walk away, heart hammering, when Victor called after me, voice cracking for the first time. You'll regret this, Elena. Mark my words. Blood is blood. The gate clicked shut behind me, and I stood there until their old sedan disappeared down the road, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I was in the kitchen making pancakes for Lily and Noah when my phone rang. It was Michael Hargrove, the corporate attorney who had handled my biggest condo conversion last year. His voice was clipped. Elena, we have a problem. 3 of your key investors just pulled out of the Riverside project. They cited reputational concerns after receiving anonymous letters about your family history and alleged instability. I traced one of the letters. It came from an IP address linked to your father's old construction office. The room tilted. Victor had promised regret, and he had delivered it with the same precision he used to run his crew. I hung up and stared at Lily, flipping pancakes with Ryan's help. The project was worth nearly $2 million in future profit. Losing it meant I would have to liquidate part of the estate just to keep the company afloat. Ryan caught my expression and pulled me aside later that afternoon while the kids played. Whatever this is, we'll figure it out together, he said quietly. But 2 weeks later, the phone calls from clients started dropping off. Sarah Mitchell left a voicemail saying she was sorry, but her partners were nervous after hearing the same rumors at a charity gala. Even Barbara Klein called from Florida Voice Tight, asking if I needed her to fly back and vouch for me. The sabotage was slow, deliberate, and perfectly timed. I hired Michael full-time to fight it, but the damage was already spreading like cracks in foundation. Then came the night Ryan sat me down after the kids were asleep. Noah's teacher mentioned something at pickup today. Apparently, some parents heard whispers about Lily's troubled family background. He's getting teased at school. Ryan's eyes were tired. I love you, Elena. I love Lily. But I can't watch my son get pulled into this war. I think we need some space until this blows over. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The door closed behind him with the quiet finality of every other abandonment I had survived, and I realized the choice I had made at the gate had cost me the one family I had chosen for myself. I sold 20 acres of the back property the following month to cover the losses from the canceled deals. The check felt like signing away pieces of the promise I had made Lily when she was 3. She cried when the surveyors came, asking why we were losing part of our backyard. I held her and told her it was just business, but inside, I felt the same hollow ache I had felt at 21 in that parking lot. My mother, Diane, sent one last letter through Jessica Hale. It was 3 sentences long. She said they had found help through an old church friend and didn't need anything from me after all. No apology, no mention of the sabotage, just the same careful silence that had always protected Victor. Jessica showed up the next day with takeout and a fierce hug, but even she looked worried. They're telling everyone at the country club that you refuse to help, and they're doing fine without you. People are buying it. The rumors had shifted from poison to victory lap. Lauren Fields, my new colleague at the office, who had watched the whole Riverside deal collapse, pulled me aside one afternoon. I overheard Victor at a supplier's lunch last week. He was bragging that the girl finally learned her place. They're untouched, Elena. Still playing the victims while you're the one paying. Her words landed like the final nail. I had chosen myself and Lily at that gate, and in doing so, I had isolated us both. Ryan and Noah still came around on weekends, but the easy laughter was gone. Lily stopped asking about grandparents, but the questions lived in her eyes every time she saw other kids with full families. Some nights I sit on the remaining porch swing and wonder if refusing them was the right call. I kept my promise to Lily. She will never feel unwanted by me, but the price was every other connection I had built. My father and mother never called again. They never had to. They had won without lifting another finger. I still have Barbara's unopened bottle of champagne on the shelf. I doubt I will ever pop it. Some victories taste too much like loss to celebrate. Thank you for listening to my story. It still hurts to tell, but maybe someone watching needs to hear that sometimes choosing yourself doesn't feel like winning at all. Have you ever had to walk away from family, knowing it would cost you everything else you loved? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what you would have done differently. Your stories keep me going.